I am sharing with you some of my favorite preschool activities, and this is just part one. Favorite preschool activities, I had to divide them up into 2 vlogs. So today I am sharing with you 10 of my favorite preschool activities. If you are new to my channel, I am a semi-homeschooling mom. I send my daughter to school 2 days a week and I homeschool the rest of the weeks. She is in preschool right now, so I am always full of fun preschool lesson plans and preschool activities. So if that interests you, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more ideas. Let's jump right into my first preschool activity, and this is using beads. This one is having my daughter practice looking at a pattern and then replicating it. So one way I like to do this is by first taking a pipe cleaner and putting some beads on it in a certain pattern. And this one I used 3 different colors and just kept repeating that pattern. And then I give Layla Jane a bunch of beads and a pipe cleaner and ask her to replicate the exact same pattern herself. So this is good for her having to recognize what a pattern is, but also putting those tiny little beads on a pipe cleaner is great for those fine motor skills and hand-eye coordination. So this is always a fun one, and then we have matching bracelets at the end. Number 2 is a fun one, and that is when I blindfold Layla Jane and give her like a task or make her go through like an obstacle course throughout the living room or wherever we happen to be. In this case, we were down in the living room and I was just telling her maybe like go 5 steps forward, turn to your left, turn to your right, take 3 steps forward this time, and just trying to navigate her way through the living room. And she could only use her sense of hearing for this. And it was really good because it involved counting. She had to count how many steps she was doing. And then also we got to practice her left and her right. And she got confused a few times on that one and actually ran into a few things, but I always make sure she's not moving too fast and doesn't hurt herself. But she really likes that one and has such a fun time with it, and it just really helps her work on her listening. Activity number 3 also has to do with having her blindfolded and working on her other senses. So for this one, I took 3 cups and I filled them with objects all different weights. One of them was just filled with some cotton balls, so it was super light. The other one, I put 1 lemon in, and then the 3rd cup, I put 2 lemons in there. For some reason, I had a bunch of lemons at this time, so it worked perfectly. And then I blindfold her and sit her at the counter and have her feel each of the cups. And she has to kind of talk about which one's heavier, which one's lighter. And then I have her line them up from lightest to heaviest. And I'm kind of helping her reach for the cup or put the cup right in front of her and then help her line them up and tell her where to place them. And then when she's done, she can take off the blindfold and look in the cups and see if she got it right, if it was indeed ordered from least to greatest. And again, that's just working on her other senses, feeling things, seeing how heavy things are, and her listening skills too again. Activity number 4 is such a good life skill too, and that involves just getting into the kitchen. So a lot of times Layla Jane and I bake, and I would always pre-measure out everything. And then one day I realized, no, she needs to learn how to measure things, how to pour things, how to determine if this is 1 cup, 2 cups. I started giving her more responsibility in the kitchen, and she really is doing a great job at it. The other day we were making some Nutella scones, which were delicious, and I had her measure out the flour, and we had to do 2 cups, so she had to practice putting in enough flour to get to 2 cups. I also did some work with a tablespoon, and I taught her how to level off the tablespoon so it's flat on the top. And then we also did some baking powder, and she got to practice putting the tablespoon into the baking powder and then using that little side rim that's usually in a baking powder to scrape off the top. You know, these are just good life skills for her to have, and she really loved that responsibility. So I'm definitely going to be putting her in charge more, measuring and pouring out ingredients. And another good one in the kitchen is cracking an egg. Now, if you are cracking an egg for a recipe, I really suggest having your child crack it into a separate bowl. So if they get some shells in there, you can easily pick them out and it doesn't ruin your whole dish. So anytime I'm baking, Layla loves cracking eggs. I give her a separate little bowl. She cracks the eggs in there. If there are any shells, which usually there aren't, she's getting very good, but sometimes there are shells, but we can pick them out before we dump the eggs into the big mixing bowl. My next activity is scissor skills. This is such an important thing to learn, and it is really hard for kids to learn how to properly hold scissors and to cut. One thing that I saw that I found really helps is if you take a long piece of paper. I didn't have any long long paper at the time, so I just took a bunch of paper and taped them together. I drew a line down the center, and then I taped one end of the paper up to the fire mantle place. Then she held the other so she can hold it taut. And then I told her just to cut and practice cutting up the line. And she really liked doing that. She thought that was super fun. And that's a great way to start. Start with just basic straight lines. And then maybe eventually start doing like zigzag lines, curved lines, anything like that. When you think they've mastered that, give them something a little bit harder to try to cut out. The other day I think it was a star that she was cutting, and she cut that out, and she did a great job doing that. And she cut out a heart. You know, you never really know what your kids are capable of until you just kind of push them a little bit. So I did that. I just gave her kind of an odd shape, and she went at it and did a really fantastic job. So don't be afraid to test out something a little more difficult with your kids too. I've also created some fun scissor activities that you can download. If you go to the link in my description below, you can go to my spring store, or you can go to my Teacher Pay Teacher stores, and I have some worksheets on there which are great for cutting skills. This next activity is super fun. I took just some white poster board that I had, like the thick poster board, but you could also just use a cardboard box. And I traced both of my hands on it and then drew the fingernails. And then I also just drew a face on there for fun too. And then I went and took some clear packing tape and taped the entire top of it. So that way, if you write on it, you can easily wipe it off and start over again. Layla Jane loves painting nails, but it can get a little messy. This was a fun way for her to paint nails and pretend like she's doing nails. You can use markers, you can use paint. Markers I really suggest because then you can easily wipe it off. And she was doing nails, she was able to do the makeup on the face that I did. And then when we were done, we just got a baby wipe and wiped it all clean so she can redo it. Now again, you don't have to use a manicure or makeup. Your kid might not be interested in that. Maybe they're interested in a fire truck. You could draw a fire truck on there and they can color it, or a Jeep, or whatever it is they happen to be interested in at the moment. Maybe it's dinosaurs. Put that on there, cover it with some transparent tape, and let your kids have fun coloring and then wiping it off. Another great activity and a good gross motor activity to practice is throwing. So I do this a lot in our house, and I just do it with random things. The day that I filmed this, we just were throwing socks, rolled up socks, into Angie's little bounce seater. I always set like a spot where, okay, you can't go past this line, because if I don't, she'll try to cheat and just get really up close to it. And if I think it's too easy, I'll have Layla Jane step back, or I'll move the target further back. So in this case, I ended up moving the bounce seater back a little bit at one point. Sometimes we practice doing overhand or underhand, so she learns the difference between those two, and she's working different muscles. Even at one point, we laid Angie down in the middle, and Angie was an obstacle that Layla Jane had to throw the sock over Angie into the seater. So you can just have fun with it. And activity number 10 is weaving. So there are some really cute kid loom kits, but I don't have one of those, so I created my own one day. I just took an empty cereal box and cut the front off of it. Then I took some string, I just had a bunch of yarn, and I taped it going across the opening. The further away you put the string, the easier it's gonna be. So if you wanna make it more difficult for your kid, put the strings closer together. And then I took about 4 strings of different colors and taped them to the end of the box and just taped one side of it. So then Layla Jane would take one of the strings, and we practiced weaving it over and under the other strings, the parallel strings. And I got to use some good words like vocab, like over, under, alternate, and it was really good, fine motor skills, hand-eye coordination, and she really liked that. And again, if it gets too easy, add more string so that they're closer together, so it's a little bit tighter for them. And she really enjoyed that, and it kept her busy for a while, and it was just a great skill building activity. And those are 10 of my favorite preschool activities. This is part 1, so be on the lookout for part 2 coming out soon.